False alarm, false alarm. What's going on, guys? Pete Nova here with Player Profiler. I am back with my top 10 takeaways from week number 3. Super excited to be here tonight with you guys. As always, if you guys have any questions at all, throw them in the chat. We will get to them at the end of the show for a mailbag. But super excited to be here with you guys tonight. Week 3, a lot has gone on, a lot to unpack, a lot to talk about. Let's just kick it off with our first player or first topic, which has probably already been discussed, right? I mean, we've already it was a Thursday night game. James Cook has been cooking, right? James Cook, if you follow me on here on Player Profiler, I was a little bit concerned about the regression for the touchdowns with James Cook. He was not a player that I was super, super heavily drafting. I would say this, right? James Cook, I did not anticipate James Cook to see the volume increase that we have seen for James Cook. Right now, James Cook is 5th in points per game, and that's when removing touchdowns, right? And we talked about earlier on in the season, James Cook, the touchdown regression and how much over 50% of his points last year were from touchdowns, right? And now we're seeing it even with touchdowns removed. He is being effective, 14.8 fantasy points per game. If you take away all of the touchdowns for James Cook this year, he has scored 4 touchdowns in 3 weeks. So not as touchdown dependent as we initially expected. I would also say about James Cook, 5.68 yards per carry in week 3. He looks phenomenal. And the opportunity share for James Cook has gone up tremendously. Okay. 3rd in fantasy football points per game. And the opportunity share is 72.1%. That is 14th in the NFL. And that's up from last year, where last year he had 58.9% and was ranked 25th in the NFL. Those were some of the concerns with James Cook, right? The opportunity share. He wasn't inside the top 20, and he had other people and Ray Davis and Ty Johnson, right, that were kind of nipping at his heels a little bit and taking some of that volume away from him. And so it felt like touchdown dependency was very, very real for James Cook. But we're seeing that opportunity share jump up 13% from last year through 3 games, right? And that extra opportunity and extra volume is helping him out tremendously. And so if you drafted James Cook, you're feeling pretty good about it. The schedule also for James Cook is phenomenal coming up. If you go over on Player Profiler, you will see the next 10 matchups. He doesn't face a top 15 unit in terms of point in a plus matchup. He only plays 1 plus matchup from a defensive standpoint in the next 10 games, right? There's only 1 defense inside the top 15. I believe they're number 8 in terms of the defense that he is facing. And I think it's in 2 weeks. I'll pull up the schedule a little bit later and circle back there. But ultimately, he's got a phenomenal schedule coming up. And so James Cook should be wheels up and continue his, ascendance, essentially. Now, number 2 here is Chase Brown, panic button. And yeah, Chase Brown. I was high on Chase Brown. I kind of bought into him as the offseason got going, as they didn't really add a ton of competition there in Cincinnati. And the volume is there for for Chase Brown. I mean, he right now, 3rd in opportunity share, 84% opportunity share for the running back position, and yet he's only 9 points per game. That's all he's giving us is 9 points per game. And the problem is, I mean, offense is below average, right? Burrow was not there. We expected a bad defense, an offense that's going to be trailing in games, that's going to be good, high scoring offense, top 10, top 5 in the NFL. And we assumed that that would lead to a good game script for James Cook to catch passes out of the backfield. And he's in a backfield that doesn't have much, if any, competition, which we are seeing. 3rd in opportunity share at 84%. But the problem is, this is a guy that has negative yards before contact. Negative yards before contact. So he's not really being given an opportunity to actually produce with the touches he's being given. And so, I don't think it's all on Chase Brown, right? And granted, Joe Burrow was there for the first 2 games of the season outside of, I guess, 1.5, we'll say. And I think Browning is okay. They had a tough matchup against the Vikings, but there is some concern for Chase Brown, and I don't blame people if you own him. I wouldn't be selling him low right now. This is a week against Denver, who has trouble when it comes to defending running backs out of the backfield. We saw Marion Hampton catch 6-7 passes this week against Denver, and we saw Jonathan Taylor have a really, really good game out of the backfield, catching passes against Denver as well 2 weeks ago. So they play Denver this week. I'm hopeful that Chase Brown can give us a little bit of a bounce back against a linebacker core that struggles right now, is one of the worst in the NFL. So we'll see if Chase Brown can rebound this week against Denver. But I would have some concerns if I have him, but I wouldn't be selling him low at the moment. And maybe that's a buy window for you if you're, someone that still believes in Chase Brown and think this is just a little bit of a bump in the road. Now, moving on to number 3, and it's going to be Quinshon Judkins' Ascension. Judkins, I mean, he's looked really good, right? I don't need to be a genius to sit here and tell you that Quinshon Judkins has started off really, really strong in his NFL career through 2 games. He took nearly all of the early down and short yardage work and got almost mostly all of the goal line snaps, which is a major shift from last week's split, right? What we saw last week with, the rotation with Jerome Ford, now that rotation has shifted to Quinshon Judkins. 18 carries, 94 yards, a touchdown. He did have a catch for just 1 yard. So that's a little bit of the concern is, if this Browns offense is not in a a good game script, right? Because maybe they're playing from behind. Does Judkins get that receiving work? It is yet to be seen. We know Dylan Sampson was a favorite of Joe Flacco's the first 2 weeks out of the backfield as a catcher. So we'll see if is Judkins going to be a guy that becomes touchdown dependent. Very, very possible. But right now, you should be happy with what you've gotten from Judkins, who was going in that 110 to 130 range, right? I'm expecting low-end RB2 for him rest of season for Judkins. I'm not going to go out there and throw, some crazy offers for him like Chase Brown for Judkins. Brown still has higher upside, in my opinion, because of the receiving volume and because he's still going to get that volume, right? I think I would prefer Brown because ultimately, I still think that offense will be better too. But with Judkins, how many rushes in the red zone is he going to get, right? How many touchdown opportunities is he going to get? We'll see if the Browns can continue to, stack that momentum. But it wasn't like they lit the world on fire against the Packers, but it was a good game script for Judkins, 18 carries, right? We've seen the Browns last year and coming into this year have to throw the football a ton because they're either playing from behind or they can't get much going on the ground. And so, I do think with Judkins, I don't want to get over my skis about him, but it is very, very nice. And you got a very good value for him, right? And obviously the NFL investigation with the suspension / injury, if that happens, right, Sampson, I think becomes the primary replacement in my opinion. But ultimately, Judkins, good value so far. Good to see him. That's the third takeaway so far. If you guys are in the chat, again, as I said, make sure you leave a like, you subscribe. And if you have any questions, we're going to make sure at the end of the show that we're going to answer any questions that you may have. There are some players being thrown into the chat right now, and some of them are on the show sheet for tonight, and we will definitely get to that. Now, moving on to number 4. I think I have it here. Yes, there you go. Jake Ferguson's role. Jake Ferguson, tight end 1 through 3 weeks. Can he sustain this, right? I'm not going to say yes. But the role should be expanded with CeeDee Lamb with that ankle injury. They're saying 4 to 6 weeks. I think he's probably going to aim closer to the 4 than the 6. And maybe he gives it a go, and maybe he doesn't even miss 4 games. But ultimately, Ferguson has been heavily involved in this offense. He's number 1 in targets with 32 for the tight end position. 27 in receptions so far is number 1 in the NFL for tight ends. 183 receiving yards, second in the NFL for the tight end position. 12 receptions in week 3 for Jake Ferguson. So that's really, really nice to see. If you have him, we expect that role to continue to expand for Jake Ferguson. And outside of Ferguson, the pass catchers are kind of limited. We have Pickens, right? And Pickens and Ferguson. Javonte Williams can catch the ball out of the backfield. We've seen him be capable of that over the last few seasons. But I mean, Ferguson looks like a favorite of Dak Prescott. I don't know, George Pickens. He's not the kind of receiver that gets heavy volume. His volume should tick up, and this should be a positive for Pickens, not a negative. But Ferguson's volume, I think, is the one that's going to increase more than I would expect Pickens. I expect Ferguson to out-target Pickens during this time because he seems to be a security blanket for Dak. But I loved Ferguson coming into last year because the year prior, Dak loved Ferguson, but then Dak got injured last year, and then we didn't see Jake Ferguson do what we had hoped for because he didn't really have a quarterback throwing him the football. So if you have Jake Ferguson, you're feeling good. You're feeling right. He's not going to be tight end one on the year, but he's done an awesome job for you through 3 weeks of the season. So awesome to see for him. And, we'll have to keep an eye on, CeeDee Lamb and see when he comes back. Moving on to number 5, Jordan Mason's bell cow role. Let's talk about Jordan Mason, right? 16 carries, 116 yards, 2 total touchdowns, 23.6 fantasy points. And he's practically taken over the backfield. No Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler on IR, and he became the clear lead back. And with this Vikings offense with Carson Wentz, he looked not great. Carson Wentz back there with a little bit of pressure on him. I thought he looked pretty bad. Granted, he did what he had to do. And they won comfortably. A lot of that had to do with the defense. And again, Jordan Mason, 116 yards on 16 carries, 2 touchdowns. I ultimately don't think they're going to ask Carson Wentz to air out the football. And with a competent player in Jordan Mason, with J.J. McCarthy missing time, Jordan Mason becomes a guy that they're going to continue to lean on. And Jordan Mason becomes a mid RB2, maybe high-end RB2. You could even say RB1 territory while Aaron Jones is out and J.J. McCarthy is out. Now, snap share-wise, he played 75% of the snaps before garbage time, right? And so he handled pretty much all of the early down and third down work. I mean, he was involved on in both phases there, right? The early down and the third down work. And Xavier Scott had a minor role. Cam Akers only saw time in garbage time. So I wouldn't worry about looking at the snaps and seeing Cam Akers got some touches. Cam Akers got time when it didn't really matter. Now, factors, of course, benefited from the game script. J.J. McCarthy's injury, of course, which we talked about, I think should continue to help him. I think Mason could be a little bit matchup reliant just because it depends on the game script. And this one, it was just so heavily in his favor. But right now, he's a must start while Aaron Jones is out. And he could stay. I mean, if Jordan Mason continues to play really well, there's a world where Jordan Mason is the lead back here, right? We saw him look good even when Aaron Jones was healthy. Doesn't mean Aaron Jones, you should be panicking if you have him and you're waiting for him to come off IR. But ultimately, I mean, Aaron Jones could and should see his role reduced most likely when he comes back. So those are some takeaways so far. We're going to move to takeaway 6, and then we'll take a short break. And it's Maye-be fantasy gold. Drake Maye has looked phenomenal this year, guys. Drake Maye, if you drafted him, you got a really nice value. Drake Maye right now, quarterback 5 on the year for fantasy points, 785 yards is 5th total for the quarterback position. 5 touchdowns, tied for 7th, right? So when we saw Drake Maye and we think about this Patriots offense, we're thinking Not a lot of touchdowns, but, probably going to do a lot with his legs, and that should be good for fantasy and give us a solid value. Well, he's getting it done, when it comes to throwing the football, right? His completion percentage, third in the NFL, 72.6% completion percentage, and he's rushing the ball too. Not as maybe as high as I would have wanted it. 29 yards per game is still really good. He's given us 3 points in addition with those rushing yards. And I think he's kind of proven to us that he does not really need to use his legs to be fantasy relevant at the quarterback position. We haven't seen a lot of quarterbacks, put up a ton of points so far this season. And with Drake Maye, he's been a bright spot at the position so far through 3 weeks. And I expect it to continue. If you drafted Drake Maye, you likely got a really nice value on him. He was outside the top 100s. And that's one of the reasons why I generally don't like to draft quarterbacks that high, because you can get some solid values at the position. If you even think about like best ball, right? Like you draft a guy like Maye, you draft maybe some later tier players at quarterback, right? And stack up on some skill players, and you could be in business. And if you are playing in fast draft, you actually don't even have to put quarterbacks in your lineup, right? It's all skill players, which maybe you prefer. But while we're on the topic, why don't we hear a little bit from the Podfather?
I know you're sad draft season is over, but just because the NFL season starts doesn't mean the drafting stops, because Fast Draft has the Flex 6 frenzy. You're drafting 6 guys for the Sunday slate against 9 other competitors. It's fast, it's furious, it's fun, and as with everything on Fast Draft, there are no salaries. Woo! So go to draftfaster.com, get the app, use your host promo code for a $50 deposit match. Now let's go start drafting faster.
Well, there you go. You heard it. And fast draft, I haven't had for the flex 6 so far. I have not had a ton of luck just yet. But I am in 7th right now for one of the flex 4s. If you did draft that in the preseason, so I'm super excited about that. But let's move on to number 7 here, and it's Chris Olave, volume monster. Chris Olave, 5th highest target share in the NFL for the wide receiver position. 31%. And we talked about it last week too. Chris Olave tied for second coming into this week with red zone targets, right? He had 6 coming into last week or coming into this week. And, we've seen Chris Olave be a focal point in this offense, right? Touchdowns are always going to be the issue with Chris Olave. That's really the biggest concern with him, is how high can he take that volume, right? Can he give us 100-yard games and a touchdown, right? Right now, we're just not really seeing it. It's a low ADOT, but he's right now a great flex play. And if you drafted Chris Olave, when we think about this Saints offense, it's really Kamara, Juwan Johnson, and Chris Olave. It's really that trio right now. Raheed Shaheed, has kind of been up and down so far. And right now the constants in this offense in the pass game is Olave and Johnson. And we haven't seen Kamara, he hasn't been utilized as a pass catcher nearly to what we've seen in the past. And I think the Kellen Moore offense, that's a little bit, they don't throw the running back to as much, right? And Chris Olave is seeing the benefit of that, because we see a lot of slot receivers see a lot of touches in the Kellen Moore offense. And so Chris Olave is getting the benefit of that. In week 1, 13 targets, week 2, 10 targets, week 3, 14 total targets for Chris Olave. And this is a game that got away from the Saints, right? We had guys being taken out of the game because they were so out of it. And Chris Olave, I think, had like 10 targets after the first quarter. So, that volume I expect to stay sticky for Chris Olave. I expect that to continue unless there's a quarterback change. But Rattler, I'm not saying Rattler's looked amazing, but Rattler, they haven't lost, in my opinion, because of Spencer Rattler. I think they lost because the team just stinks. The defense is not good. Special teams stinks. It's just not a good team in over there in New Orleans. But Chris Olave right now has the most targets in the NFL at the wide receiver position. So really with him, he's a great flex play. He hasn't gone over 60 yards yet 13.17 fantasy points per game. So he's giving you solid flex upside, right? Maybe he's going to have low end wide receiver 2 upside. I mean, a guy 5th in target share, leading the NFL in total targets, right? You would imagine that Chris Olave could continue to get better if they expand that role and maybe make some adjustments, right? And so hopefully he can get at least more yards. I'm not expecting the touchdowns to be there because I don't expect the team to score many of those. But Chris Olave so far has been pretty good. And if you drafted him where you did, you're feeling pretty good about Chris Olave because he was being drafted somewhere in the 70s, 70s to 80s, sometimes even 90s. And so to get a flex play there, so maybe even you might get away with it starting him as your wide receiver 2. I think that's very possible. Let's move on to one of the more polarizing topics of the discussions today. And that's Travis Hunter, man. Travis Hunter's usage issues are a concern, guys. We have seen his offensive targets drop every single week so far. And that's as the utilization on defense has started to go up and up and up. Week 1, we saw Travis Hunter 8 offensive targets. He played 10% of the defensive snaps, right? So you're feeling good. We like to see what we saw in the preseason where he was hyper-focused early on and everyone's super excited about Travis Hunter. He's going to be the highest target share earner in this offense possibly. Like people had that in their head that was a possibility, right? But we're seeing it play out, right? Jaguars defense, they're playing good, and Travis Hunter is playing good when he is on defense, right? And so they're using him more and more, right? We saw week 2 from 8 targets to 6 targets, from 10% of defensive snaps up to 60% defensive snaps, right? And I think when they saw him in week 2, because there was an injury to the secondary and he started to play more, he looked really good on defense, really hard to take him off the field. And they have some other players like Parker Washington. I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you Parker Washington's the better offensive player than Travis Hunter, but if it means that they can get him out there on defense more and it can help while their offense is still sustaining, productivity, maybe that's what they're going with. I can't tell you that that's the best idea for them to do, but maybe that's what they're thinking. Then you look in week 3, 2 offensive targets this week, 69% defensive snaps. The defensive snaps continue to go up, right? And the more the defensive snaps go up, the more the targets come down. He only played in 11 personnel, 0 snaps in 2 wide receiver sets for Travis Hunter. That's concerning as well, right? So not really a startable player, in my opinion, until we see it for Travis Hunter. And the thing is, last year, only one wide receiver was in the top 25 in points per game that ran under 26 routes per game in 2024. That was Puka Nacua. That's why I had Travis Hunter outside of my top 30 rankings for majority of the offseason. I think he just touched around 30 after I saw the preseason usage. And but it wasn't higher than that. And with Travis Hunter, the snaps on offense being limited and the routes run is concerning. They have some other players there. So, a 14% target share for Travis Hunter is just not going to get it done. We thought, okay, it could be a cheat code, right? We're getting some defensive snaps for Travis Hunter. Maybe he's getting a couple tackles to add on to, the offensive productivity. But he's a corner. How many tackles is he getting a game, right? Depending on what your league settings are, maybe you get points for deflections. I don't know, but most don't have that. And so he's not really giving us much. And it's concerning. And he is not startable until he shows us more. And so with a 14% target share, that's not going to get it done. And so I would be very, very concerned if I have Travis Hunter. The draft capital was expensive for him. Everyone kept saying, oh, such a discount for Travis Hunter. How is he going so low? The Shohei Ohtani of football. Absolutely not, right? This just and it's not fair to Travis Hunter either. But these are the realities we're living in right now where, look, things can change. These are rookies. We don't want to, and we're going to talk about some more rookies before this is over. We don't want to overreact, but when you see the defensive snaps again, I keep saying it, when you see the defensive snaps go up and the offensive targets and production go down, how sustainable is it? I don't know. We will see. Moving on to number 9 here, and it's Michael Pittman. And if you guys remember, Michael Pittman, this is a guy that nobody wanted to draft. I mean, practically nobody wanted Michael Pittman, right? The thought of Anthony Richardson being the quarterback and just a gross offense, and Josh Downs is the better player, and those words came out of my mouth. Josh Downs, I still like Josh Downs, but when Tyler Warren got drafted there, and they're running more two wide receiver sets, Warren takes over for Downs, and now Pittman's really the main more reliable player right now. He is the guy that Daniel Jones likes to go through and throw the ball to if it's not Tyler Warren, and we're seeing it pay dividends for Michael Pittman, who was a very, very nice value in fantasy drafts. 6 for 6, 73 yards and a touchdown, and right now he's wide receiver 14 in points per game in fantasy. He's running at 2.3 yards per route run, which is 10th in the NFL. He's got a 21% target share. Now, the target share is not amazing, but it's not bad either, right? There's if you told many people, hey, Michael Pittman's going to give you a 21% target share and the offense is going to be top 5, you'd sign up for that at his cost, right? And now I don't expect the Colts to be a top 5 offense rest of the season. So don't get me wrong on that. That is not going to happen, right? It's just not. And you can give the flowers to the Colts. Daniel Jones, he's looked really good, and you can't have blinders on, right? You have to be fluid and understand that things change, right? And that's one thing that has changed is this Colts offense is going to be a top 15 unit. That's what it looks like, unless Daniel Jones gets beat to shit and he ends up making mistakes and then turns into a pumpkin. But this offensive line is really good, and Jonathan Taylor is playing phenomenal. So it's taking a lot of pressure off of Daniel Jones to perform, and he's looked really good. Back is looking better, right? Can keep in mind Michael Pittman had that back issue. It looks like he's fully healthy. Right now, he has 2 out of 3 games with 19 or more fantasy points, and he only hit that number one time in 2024. He only hit that once. He's already done it in 2 out of 3 games. Michael Pittman is a must start right now, especially with this offense running as hot as they are. So good to see for Michael Pittman. Maybe not as good to see for a Josh Downs truther myself, but we have to be honest here. And Michael Pittman's just looked really, really good. Moving on to our final takeaway. And then after this, guys, we'll do a little bit of a mailbag. If you guys have questions, maybe you have some lineup questions for tonight, anything I haven't covered, maybe some buy, sell, some trade advice, whatever. I will get to that, a short little mailbag once we're done. So feel free to throw any other questions that you might have in, but this is going to be the last takeaway here. And it's Hampton and Henderson, right? The 2 rookie running backs that we all had concerns about, right? But I think it's about patience and time, right? These rookie running backs, we've seen time and time again in years past where the first stretch of the season, it takes some time. Henderson was a player, and we talked about it last week, that you drafted knowing, hey, this is a guy that's probably going to be really, really awesome second half of the year. But when he had a good preseason, he got steamed up the board and people drafted and invested in him very, very high, right? And that took away a lot of the value and turned a lot of people off because Ramondre Stevenson was still there. But we know Trevion Henderson is the better back in this backfield, right? And we're going to talk about Henderson first. 3 fumbles between the other 2 backs in Gibson and Ramondre Stevenson. Once we saw that, which they practically lost them the game, right? This was a 1-score game. Those 2 guys, I mean, you hate to put it on one or anybody for a loss, but 3 fumbles is absolutely ridiculous. And this is not a new thing with Ramondre Stevenson. And we've seen Antonio Gibson have issues fumbling too before he came there. So when that happened, 84% snap rate once Gibson fumbled, right? An 84% snap rate for Trevion Henderson. 71% of the routes for the running backs went to Henderson once that 3rd fumble happened. So when we talk about Henderson, is that going to continue? I don't know, right? We saw Henderson practically get benched, week 2 after the holdings and the bad pass protection. He wasn't out there much, and we saw his role dwindle that day, right? And then, we all assumed, oh shoot, it was over, right? Then we now see this week where those roles for Stevenson and Gibson, those dwindled down when they made their mistakes. So it'll be interesting to see Mike Vrabel and what he does next week. But we've seen in the past, right? Derrick Henry was, kind of had to wait his turn for Mike Vrabel before he got into the offense. I can tell you, though, Josh McDaniels is going to want the better player out there. I don't think Josh McDaniels, he's not going to stay loyal to Ramondre Stevenson, in my opinion. And Henderson just fits so much of what Josh McDaniels wants to do. So please, please give us what we want, and that's Henderson to at least get him a 50% share. 40% I could even live with if he's getting the majority of the passing downs, at least for now, right? And then hope that role increases later on. So we'll see what happens with Henderson, but I think that was a positive, right? And something that we could have expected, because this is Ramondre Stevenson. He has had so many fumbles over the years, so many fumbles. So we'll see how it goes. Now, moving on to the next player in here, which is Maye-be Hampton. Maye-be Hampton, 25 touches, 129 yards, and a touchdown, 24.9 fantasy points, right? We saw, unfortunately, Najee Harris, the Achilles injury, it's likely season ending. And that's super, super unfortunate. They do not have much behind him. They have Haskins, who played at Michigan with Harbaugh. So maybe, while everybody is just assuming that all of the work's going to go to Hampton, there is a world where Haskins gets some touches. We saw that last year, right? Kamani Vidal is not on this team anymore. Maybe they bring in Gus Edwards. Maybe there's a trade that comes, maybe like an Alvin Kamara trade, as they start to lose more. Who knows? But for right now, Hampton is locked in my opinion, as a low to mid RB2, right? He took advantage of a very good matchup in the Denver Broncos, 6 receptions, right? Which is encouraging. And I think that was the biggest concern with Hampton, is how much utilization does Hampton get in the pass game, right? And if you follow me on Twitter, I had put out a tweet before last week, sometime in the middle of the week, talking about how Denver, what they gave up to Jonathan Taylor in week 2 at the linebacker position, and how it sets up well for Maye-be Hampton to get on track for week 3. Denver, we talked about them with Chase Brown, very bad at covering the running back position out of the backfield. Hampton was able to take advantage of that. You hope, as a Hampton owner, that this is a confidence boost, right? And something where it's like, okay, you can kind of breathe. Like, okay, cool. Like I had my game. I scored that touchdown, right? Like I finally had that breakout game. But ultimately, I don't think that passing volume for him is going to continue. So I'm tempering expectations still. I think it's still a positive and still encouraging, because while it sucks for Najee Harris and it's very unfortunate, and I feel for him, right? That is a much more clear path, where there was a world where we were getting a little worried. Is Najee Harris going to start eating into that workload even more, because Hampton has struggled? So if you are a Hampton manager, you have to be excited about that. But I still view him as a low to mid RB2 right now, until I see consistent usage in the pass game. And especially when you consider how much these pass catchers and the ball is being spread around. Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, Ladd McConkey, those are 3 guys. Hampton's at best 4th in the pecking order for target shares. So that's going to do it for the top 10 takeaways, guys. I do see there are some comments in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure to get to those. If you guys are here, make sure you give a thumbs up, like the show. If you have questions, I'm going to be here for another 10 minutes or so to answer anything you may have. See Jamie's here in the chat. We see Fantasy Condo said, let's get it. Top 10. We have Boofy in here. He said, do you like Mark Andrews tonight? I feel like he's due for a game. Well, I mean, it's hard to say he's do for, I mean, sure. I mean, it's hard to imagine Mark Andrews doing much worse. Now I'm pulling up Mark Andrews, but I mean, he's got 2 receptions for 7 yards on 4 targets this year. So I mean, it's the usage has been really, really tough to see for Andrews. The nice thing is that we did see 2 targets for him last week inside the 5 that were in the end zone. So maybe we see, Andrews get back on track, right? But Isaiah likely not playing tonight, so that should open the door. But Detroit's number 7 when it comes to points allowed to tight ends so far through the 2 weeks. Then he plays Kansas City, who's been number 3 against the tight end position. And then he plays Houston and the Rams. He's got a tough schedule. I would say when you look at the bye, you got to hope that maybe he can turn it on because his schedule after is really, really good after the bye. He's got Chicago, who's 25th to tight ends, Miami, who's just terrible, 29th. Minnesota, who's, that number's a little skewed. They're 19th, but I think that's skewed because they've had some issues at the injuries with the linebackers, and they are healthy now with Van Ginkel coming back. Cleveland 14, the Jets 13, Cincinnati in week 13, 28th. I mean, his stretch from week 13 to week 15 is 28th, 30th, and 28th. And then he gets Green Bay. I mean, he's got a good stretch towards the end of the year. We'll see with Mark Andrews, but I do have my concerns there. We did talk about Travis Hunter. Dennis is in the house. What's going on, Dennis? Jeff said, should I flex Scadaboo or Mason? My starters are CMC and James Cook. It's a little early for that. It's hard for me to tell you, this is what you should do. What I would say, though, is, international games tend to be low scoring historically. Offenses seem to not always get off the bus. So with Jordan Mason, maybe you factor that in. Scadaboo's looked really good, but I'm still going to go with Jordan Mason. Scadaboo takes on the Chargers. Chargers defense, I think this could be their breakout game, right? I think this is like their hello to everybody. Like this defense is legit game. And so I would go with Mason over Scadaboo. It's a little early to be giving out start sits on a Monday, but that's where we're at. Leo said Neighbors and Njoku for Tyreek Hill and Bowers. Who won here? I would say the Neighbors side. I prefer Neighbors over Bowers, and Hill and Njoku. I mean, you could maybe say, okay, if Hill gets you a little closer to what Bowers, but I'm still going to take Neighbors in that deal. Bowers doesn't look fully healthy. Oronde Gadsden is a top ad. I'm not there just yet. I like Gadsden, but again, this is a Denver defense has trouble against the tight end position, so we'll see. But there's also a lot of mouths to feed in that offense, so I don't know how comfortable you're going to be to start him over a lot of other players. Gene Mack said, who should I trade for Ridley and Waddle? Hawkinson and either Kirk or Hunter or Hollywood. I have Ferguson as a starter. So you're getting Ridley and Waddle, Hawkinson and either, I assume, Christian Kirk or Travis Hunter. I mean, Christian Kirk looked phenomenal. It's really a big question mark if he can stay healthy. You're trading Hollywood Brown here. That would be my answer. There are reinforcements coming back for the Chiefs. Hunter, while he's going to sit on your bench, there's still strong upside for Travis Hunter. And I don't know that he's going to be like this ineffective all season long. I doubt it. But right now he's on your bench until proven otherwise. And Christian Kirk, if he's healthy, he's going to be really, really good, in my opinion, and a good flex play. So I think it's probably Hawkinson and definitely Hollywood Brown. That would be what I would do. Ruckus is in the house. Nino said, crazy trade. I send Neighbors plus Benson plus Pacheco for Jamar Chase, Trevion Henderson, and B-Rob. I have CMC, so I'll get that handcuff. So you're sending Neighbors. Jamar and Neighbors are practically a wash, in my opinion. Both of them have quarterback issues, and Jamar, to me, is the better player, but neither here nor there. Then you're giving up Benson and Pacheco. That's fine. And you're getting Henderson. I mean, you get the handcuff with B-Rob. Henderson, I would prefer over Benson and Pacheco, but Benson and Pacheco are going to likely give you more usable weeks in the interim. But Trevion's the better asset long-term out of those guys. Moving on to, I don't even know how to pronounce this one, but Said trying to make some trade moves. Would you give away Keenan for Trevion Henderson, half PPR? I would probably need to play him until CeeDee Lamb is back. BTJ is also on the trade block and considering making a move for him. Keenan Allen's been phenomenal. It's really hard to sit here and tell you to go ahead and move Keenan Allen. Half PPR too, like that hurts Trevion Henderson. The PPR helps him much more. Keenan probably going to score more touchdowns this year than Henderson, which sounds really crazy to say. He's got 3 already. It all depends on your room, though. I mean, if you need the running back, I'm okay with this. I mean, it's crazy. I would easily say Trevion if this was a couple weeks ago, but it depends on your room. I mean, is Keenan Allen a starter for you right now? Is he starting in the flex? Is Trevion going to be your RB2? That would be the questions I would ask. If you're telling me Trevion, if you have 2 really strong starters and your receiver core is good, your receiver core is good and you have 2 strong starting running backs, then yeah, I would do this deal and pick up Trevion just because you don't need to play him right now. And I like him longer term, but Keenan's been phenomenal. JP said, all the analysts promoting Travis Hunter simply don't know ball, the most obvious fade in years. I was not high on Travis Hunter. We'll see what happens. Maybe things will change. There's been many times so far this season on the show where we talk about a player and then they end up bouncing back next week. So we'll see. Maybe Travis Hunter bounces back next week. But that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching another great episode of Week 3 Top 10 Takeaways. Week 4 will be on the way next week. We have tons more content coming out. I have my running back rankings that I drop here that'll be out soon on Player Profiler. Make sure you are liking and subscribing. Make sure you're checking out all the other content that we have. Check out our data suite over at playerprofiler.com and all the awesome things we have to offer. And I'll see you guys next time.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.